One of these cows weighs less than some dogs. One was bred to look like a panda, and the first calves sold for $30,000 each. One holds a Guinness World Record and was nearly extinct until a single professor stepped in to save it. One grazes at 13,000 feet in the Himalayas. None of them require acres of land. Most are gentle enough for children to lead. Several are producing milk right now on small family farms that would have no room for a standard cow. 20 mini cow breeds. Some you may have heard of. Some you will not believe are real. They get more surprising the closer you get to number 1. 20. Mini Jersey, the dairy machine that fits in your backyard. If you want a cow that actually earns its keep, the Mini Jersey is the place to start. Bred down from standard Jerseys, these compact dairy animals cap out at 44 inches for cows and 46 for bulls at 3 years old. What did not get bred down is the milk quality. A good Mini Jersey produces 1.5 to 3 gallons per day, with butter fat around 5%. The kind of rich cream that makes proper butter, proper ice cream, and proper cheese. They are people-oriented, easy to halter train, and gentle enough that families with no cattle experience manage them without trouble. Lighter on fences and pasture than any full-size dairy breed, they are often the first cow a small farm adds, and frequently the only one they ever need. Care is straightforward: quality pasture or hay, fresh water, minerals, fly control, vaccines. Everything a standard cow needs, scaled down to something a backyard can hold. 19. Miniature Hereford, the family classic, smaller. The red and white Hereford is one of the most recognizable cattle breeds in the world. The miniature version keeps everything that made the original famous: the coloring, the calm temperament, the sturdy build, and shrinks it to a frame that works for smaller properties and first-time owners. Mature cows cap at 45 inches at the hip by 3 years old, most landing around 42 inches and roughly 1,000 pounds. That is about a third smaller than a standard Hereford. Kids can lead them without wrestling a half-ton animal. They are easy on fences and pastures, and steady enough in temperament that families consistently choose them as their first pet cattle. They come horned or polled. Either way, the nature stays the same. Calm, manageable, and recognizable enough that anyone who sees them in a paddock immediately knows what they are looking at, just smaller than they expected. 18. Mini Highland, the shaggy one that lives 20 years. The Mini Highland has the most recognizable silhouette in this entire list: long horns, thick shaggy double coat, and a face full of hair that requires a second look to confirm it is actually a cow. A true miniature measures 42 inches or less at the hip by 3 years old. Everything else about it is full Highland: the oily outer coat that sheds rain and snow, the soft, insulating undercoat, the long, productive lifespan. That lifespan is worth pausing on. Many Highland cows are still productive past 18 years. Reaching 20 is not unusual. For a family that invests in one as a pet or small farm animal, that is not a short-term commitment. It is a 2-decade relationship. One thing to know before buying: some Mini Highland lines were bred down using Dexter genetics, which introduces a risk of lethal dwarfism if both parents carry the BD1 or BD2 gene. Responsible breeders test through UC Davis. Always ask for chondro test results and never pair 2 carriers. The paperwork exists to protect the animal and you. 17. Dexter, Ireland's dual-purpose workhorse. The Dexter has been doing 2 jobs at once since early 19th century Ireland, where farmers with small fields needed one animal that could provide both milk and beef without demanding the pasture space of 2 separate breeds. Nothing about that has changed. Most Dexter cows mature between 36 and 42 inches at the hip and weigh 700 to 900 pounds, light enough that they will not wreck fencing or compact the ground the way heavier breeds do. On milk, a well-managed Dexter gives 1 to 3 gallons a day with high butter fat, real cream, real cheese. On beef, it raises a sturdy calf worth finishing. No other mini breed on this list gives you both with this kind of reliability. They are easy calvers, thrive on grass, and handle themselves with the calm, unfussy temperament of a breed that was shaped by practical farmers rather than show rings. The all-in-one homestead cow is not a marketing phrase for the Dexter. It is just an accurate description. 16. American Aberdeen, the breed that came out of a research project. The American Aberdeen did not emerge from centuries of traditional farming. It came out of a deliberate research project at the Trangie Agricultural Research Centre in New South Wales, Australia, where scientists spent years selecting Angus cattle specifically for efficient, compact frames. The result was a stabilized line of small, naturally hornless, almost always black cattle that spread from that one research station to farms worldwide. Mature cows stand around 42 to 46 inches and weigh 900 to 1,100 pounds. What the research project also produced, without planning for it, was an exceptionally calm animal. Aberdeens are known for easy temperaments, easy calving, calves often weighing only 30 to 45 pounds at birth, and much lower feed requirements than full-size beef breeds. About 3% of body weight in forage per day, less hay, lighter pasture pressure, easier handling. A breed designed by scientists for efficiency turned out to also be one of the better-natured pet cattle available. That was a bonus the research did not set out to find. 15. Mini-belted Galloway, the Oreo cow. People call them Oreo cows. The name is obvious the moment you see one. A dark coat with a bright white belt wrapped cleanly around the middle. The mini-belted Galloway keeps that signature marking from the standard belted Galloway breed, but brings it down to a size that works on small properties. What also carried over is the coat. Belties have a soft undercoat topped with a shaggy outer layer that sheds rain naturally and insulates against cold, which means lower winter feed costs than smooth-coated breeds. In summer, they shed down on their own. They are naturally hornless, safer around families, and their temperament is reliably calm. Full minis measure 36 to 42 inches at the hip at 3 years old. Mid-size minis fall between 42 and 48. Always verify age and height when buying, because young standard cattle can look mini-sized before they finish growing. The white belt is not enough to confirm breed or size. Get the paperwork. 14. High Park, the designer breed, built for the internet. The High Park was designed to be photographed. It is a composite breed. Highland cattle crossed with white park types, specifically bred to combine the Highland's long, shaggy double coat with sharp black markings around the eyes, ears, nose, and hooves, long hair, prominent horns, and Panda-style face markings on a compact frame. It looks like something invented for social media, and in a sense it was. It has also become a genuine favorite on hobby farms because the Highland temperament carried through. Calm, manageable, photogenic. Micro High Parks measure under 36 inches at the tailhead at 3 years old. Mini High Parks fall between 36 and 42 inches. Weight typically runs 5 to 700 pounds, light enough for easy handling. In hot climates, that thick coat needs management. Shade, water, and fly control are not optional. But for anyone in a cooler region who wants a cow that will stop every visitor in their tracks, nothing on this list looks quite like a High Park standing in morning light. 13. Mini Holstein, America's most recognizable dairy cow scaled down. The standard Holstein is the largest dairy breed in America. It averages 58 inches tall and 1,500 pounds, an animal that needs serious infrastructure and serious acreage. The mini version sits at 36 to 42 inches and 5 to 800 pounds. That is roughly a third to half the size of the original, keeping the bold black and white or red and white patterning and the calm dairy temperament. For families who grew up with that classic dairy cow image and want to actually own one without a full working farm, the Mini Holstein closes that gap. It is immediately recognizable, manageable on small acreage, and social enough to be a genuine companion animal rather than just livestock. Holsteins are typically born horned, but polled genetics exist. If dehorning is something you want to avoid, ask specifically for polled stock when shopping. With good hay or pasture, minerals, shade, and fly control, a Mini Holstein in the 5 to 800 pound range is one of the more straightforward pet cattle to maintain. 12. Mini Texas Longhorn, same legendary horns, smaller package. The Texas Longhorn is one of the most iconic cattle breeds in American history, and those horns are what everyone pictures. The miniature version keeps them. Long, sweeping, unmistakably Texan. The paint patterns stay just as striking. What changed is the frame that carries them. Female mini Longhorns must measure 45 inches or less at 3 years old. Bulls cap at 48 inches, steers at 50. That smaller frame makes them easier on fencing and pastures, and manageable enough that families keep them as halter-trained pet cattle rather than commercial livestock. Breed associations run miniature classes at shows and fairs. giving kids the chance to show an animal that looks every bit the Western classic. If you are buying, do not skip the registration paperwork. The Texas Longhorn Breeders Association of America has clear miniature standards, and verifying age alongside height matters. Young standard cattle can appear small before they finish growing. One practical note: those horns are real. Wide gates and roomy feeders are not optional. 11. Minivaca. The breed Mexico developed in a university lab. Most miniature cattle breeds emerged from traditional farming, generations of smallholders keeping the smallest animals and breeding from them. The Minivaca took a different route. In the 1970s, researchers at the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México deliberately bred down Indo-Brazil Zebu to create a dwarf line suited to small acreage in hot, humid conditions. The Zebu traits stayed intact: the hump, the loose skin, the floppy ears, and the heat tolerance that makes these cattle thrive in climates where other breeds struggle. What the university project compressed was the size. Most adult Minivaca fall in the 300 to 500 pound range for cows, 400 to 600 for bulls, with height capped around 42 inches behind the hump. There is no officially published size standard for the breed, which means due diligence matters when buying. Ask for documentation tying the animal back to the Mexican breeding line. What you are looking for is the heat-hardy toughness of Zebu genetics in a frame that does not require extensive pasture, and if the paperwork confirms it, that is exactly what this breed delivers. 10. Panda cow. Trademarked, registered, and once worth $30,000. The Panda cow did not happen by accident. Richard Gradwell of Happy Mountain Miniature Cattle Farm in Washington bred deliberately for the pattern: broad white belt around the middle, bright white face, black eye patches, then trademarked the look and registered it through his own miniature cattle registry. Early reports counted only about 24 Panda cows in existence. Perfectly marked calves, even years later, were still considered rare. When the breed first caught headlines, some calves sold for $30,000, not for beef, not for dairy, for the look. Panda cows are kept as pets, show animals, and status symbols. They grow to mid-size mini height, around 44 inches at the hip at 3 years old, right in the standard 42 to 48 inch range. But nobody raising them is thinking about production figures. They are not recognized by mainstream beef breed associations. They are a designer miniature type, and that is entirely the point. One man decided to breed a cow that looked like a panda, registered the pattern as intellectual property, and created a market for a $30,000 calf. That actually happened. 9. Miniature Zebu. The hump is not just for show. Miniature Zebu look exotic in a way that other mini cattle breeds simply do not. The signature hump above the shoulders, the loose dewlap hanging from the neck, the short horns and upright ears. That look is not decorative. The hump stores energy. The dewlap increases surface area for heat dissipation. These are functional adaptations to hot, humid climates where other cattle breeds struggle to regulate their temperature and fight off parasites. They max out at 42 inches tall, measured behind the hump. Most adults stand 36 to 38 inches. Cows weigh 300 to 500 pounds, bulls 400 to 600. Light feeders, easy to handle when halter-trained, and genuinely well-suited to warm environments. They are one of the more practical, exotic-looking pet cattle available. The Zebu family, Bos indicus, is one of the oldest domesticated cattle lineages on Earth. The miniature Zebu carries that ancient lineage in a frame small enough for a hobby farm. The hump is still there. It still works exactly as it always has. 8. Dahomey. The African breed with a blue tongue that lives 20 years. The Dahomey is the smallest African humpless shorthorn cattle breed that exists. Native to Benin in West Africa, adults average about 35 inches at the shoulder. Cows weigh around 400 pounds, bulls about 570. They are a naturally tiny taurine breed, not bred down from anything larger. This is just how big they get. Up close, one feature immediately stands out: a blue-tinted tongue and throat. It is unusual enough that people who see it for the first time assume something is wrong. Nothing is wrong. It is a characteristic of the breed. What else is unusual is the lifespan. Zoos report Dahomey cattle living up to 20 years, impressive for any cattle breed, exceptional for one this small. They handle tropical heat, heavy rainfall, and cold European winters with equal composure. Conservation grazing projects across Europe keep them specifically because their light frames do not damage sensitive ground. Farmers value them for low input costs and straightforward grass-based management. A naturally tiny West African cow with a blue tongue that can outlive most dogs. That is not a combination anyone would invent, but it is what the Dahomey actually is. 7. Achhami, Nepal's cow measured in fists. The Achhami goes by another name in Nepal, Naumuthi, which means 9 fists from hoof to hump. That is how small it is. Its height was historically measured in fist widths rather than inches or centimeters, because the fist was a more practical unit for an animal this compact. Found in the far western hill districts of Achham, Bajhang, Bajara, and Doti, these tiny zebu are built entirely for steep terrain and minimal inputs. The numbers are almost hard to believe. Cows average about 35 inches tall and 240 pounds. Bulls are slightly larger at 38 inches and 330 pounds. Locals call them the smallest cattle in Nepal. Field surveys confirm they are among the tiniest recognized cattle populations in the world. Milk yield is modest, 1.5 to 3 liters a day depending on season and feed, but consistent enough to supply a family with tea, yogurt, and cooking milk without commercial infrastructure. They mature later than high-output dairy breeds, but in return they are hardy, thrifty, and capable of producing on rough forage that would not sustain anything larger. 9 fists tall. Still a real cow. Still producing milk in the Himalayan foothills the way it has for generations. 6. Malnad Gidda, India's rainforest dwarf, officially recognized in 2012. The Malnad Gidda is not a crossbred miniature or a deliberately downsized version of something larger. It is a true small breed, shaped by the Western Ghats of India over generations, officially recognized as a distinct breed only in 2012. Adults average about 35 inches tall at the withers and typically weigh between 175 and 265 pounds. What sets them apart from most cattle on this list is their foraging capacity. Research shows they consume about 4.5% of their body weight in forage, and that forage can be a wide variety of hill plants that other breeds would not touch. Families in Karnataka keep them on minimal inputs, sometimes grazing with almost no supplemental feed. For a homesteader who wants a cow without the feed bill, that is a significant difference. Milk yield runs 2 to 4 liters a day on simple pasture. Small frame, compact horns, black coat with fawn shading. An animal shaped by one of the world's most biodiverse ecosystems, quietly eating things other cattle ignore, producing steadily on almost nothing. It was doing this for centuries before anyone officially named it. Lima, Wayanad dwarf, the cow that walks 9 miles a day. The Wayanad dwarf comes from the forest edge of Kerala, where it has always been kept by the Kuruma community in a way that looks nothing like conventional cattle management. Herds leave at dawn, graze 6 to 9 miles across the forest landscape, and return by evening. A lead cow carries a wooden bell so the herd can be tracked through the trees. No intensive housing, no supplemental feed, minimal disease, strong parasite resistance, and a consistent milk supply for families at the end of every day. Adults average about 41 inches tall and weigh around 200 pounds. Horns are short, about 5 inches, sweeping out to the sides. Coats come in black, red, or patched white. Genetic studies place the Wayanad firmly in a heat-adapted Bos indicus cluster, which explains the parasite resistance and the ability to thrive in conditions that would compromise heavier breeds. The milk yield is not massive, but it is richer than the small frame suggests. Higher solids and butterfat than expected. Enough for chai, curd, and ghee for a household. For anyone keeping cattle the way the Kuruma community has kept them, the Wayanad dwarf does not need anything the forest cannot already provide. It has been working that way for a very long time. 4. Kasaragod dwarf, the Kerala native with documented disease resistance. The Kasaragod dwarf is native to Kerala and built for conditions that would compromise most cattle: tropical heat, humidity, and disease pressure that requires real physiological resilience to survive. Adult cows average about 35 inches at the shoulder and weigh a little over 300 pounds. Bulls are slightly larger at around 41 inches and 400 pounds. Compact, sturdy, and genuinely tough. Field studies in Kerala documented something that most miniature breeds cannot claim: resilience to foot and mouth disease during active outbreaks. While other cattle in the same area were affected, Kasaragod dwarfs showed notable resistance. That is not a characteristic bred in deliberately. It is what happens when a small population survives in a demanding environment for long enough that only the resistant animals reproduce. Conservation groups in Kerala have treated each remaining animal as irreplaceable, banking frozen semen and tracking population genetics carefully. Birth weights average around 24 pounds. First calving comes at about 3 years. The breed is alive because people decided it was worth keeping, and the disease resistance data gave them a scientific argument to go alongside the cultural one. 3. Lulu, the Himalayan cow that weighs less than some ponies. The Lulu comes from the Mustang district of Nepal, grazing at altitudes between 9,200 and 13,100 feet. If that number does not immediately register, 13,000 feet is above the altitude where most trees stop growing. The air is thin, the winters are brutal, and the forage is whatever survives up there. The Lulu does too. Adult cows average about 34 inches at the shoulder and weigh around 275 pounds. Some documented females weigh as little as 150 pounds. Less than many ponies, less than some large dogs. This is a fully grown cow. It is just that small. Milk yield runs about 1.5 liters a day, just under half a gallon, which is enough for tea, yogurt, and ghee for a mountain family with no access to refrigeration or commercial supply chains. Over 90% of Lulu cows tested carry the A2 milk gene, which some buyers specifically seek out. True Lulu are tied tightly to the Mustang valleys. If you find one for sale, verify the source. This is a rare animal from a very specific place, and that specificity is exactly what makes it what it is. 2. Punganur, the sacred dwarf Zebu that nearly disappeared. The Punganur comes from the Chittor district of Andhra Pradesh in southern India, and it ranks among the smallest cattle on record. Full-grown bulls stand around 42 inches at the shoulder and weigh about 530 pounds. Cows are smaller, about 38 inches and 375 pounds. Short crescent-shaped horns, coats in white, gray, red, or brown, and a face that people consistently describe as almost cartoon-like in its gentleness. For centuries, the Punganur was considered sacred in parts of Andhra Pradesh. Temples kept them. Families who owned one were considered to be under divine protection. That cultural status did not protect them from population collapse. The decline of traditional farming and the introduction of crossbreeding reduced their numbers to critical levels, and at one point the breed was genuinely close to disappearing entirely. Conservation efforts have brought the population back from the edge. True Punganur stock is still tied to its home region, still rare, and still priced accordingly. But it is here, a dwarf Zebu that once lived in temple compounds and was believed to bring blessings to any household that kept one. Whether you believe that or not, the animal that carries that history is genuinely unlike anything else on this list. 1. Vechur, the Guinness record holder saved by one professor. The Vechur cow holds the Guinness World Record as the smallest cattle breed on Earth. Adults stand about 35 inches tall. Most cows weigh between 200 and 330 pounds. The name comes from the village of Vechur in Kottayam, Kerala, and the breed has been part of that landscape for centuries. Compact, heat-tolerant, living on minimal inputs, producing milk for families who had no room for anything larger. By the late 1980s, it had almost ceased to exist. Crossbreeding programs introduced in India to increase milk yields replaced native breeds across the country, and the Vechur, too small, too low output by commercial standards, was quietly disappearing. In 1989, Professor Sosama Ipi of Kerala Agricultural University identified what was happening, located the last surviving animals, and launched a conservation program that ran for years on limited resources and genuine personal commitment. Her work is the reason the Vechur exists today. What the breed offers now is exactly what it always offered: practical milk production for small households, 1 to 3 liters a day, in tropical conditions, from an animal that needs no fancy infrastructure and is gentle enough to lead and halter without difficulty. Coats range from fawn to black and white. Temperament is calm. They are easy on land and easy to be around. The smallest cattle breed in the world, nearly gone 35 years ago, Still here because one person decided it was worth saving, went and found the last ones, and did not stop.